Park. Sorry, forgot the second part. Hi, folks. So most of you in the room that know me know that I can't stay still. So I'm going to be moving, and hopefully you can hear me. Do I have the mic okay? Yeah? And it also means that I'm going to be going back and forth to my computer, so I hope I don't get you seasick. Anyway, bear with me. I have roughly 1 million years of evolutionary history to go over in the next 25 minutes, but it's going to be okay. We can do this. But first of all, thank you all very much for being here on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday afternoon. Thank you to my host. Thank you for the invitation. I'm delighted to be included amongst such an esteemed panel of individuals, and it's really awesome to be here. So, without further ado, yes, gray wolves in deep time, recent history, and now. And what I've attempted to do here is depict that visually for you. Just a bit about myself, because it sort of gives you some insight into why I might be taking the approach that I am. I am trained as an evolutionary ecologist. I am a field scientist, spent much of my career engaged in conservation biology, and I've been studying an array of endangered mammal species around the world. I've been extraordinarily privileged to study just some amazing species within the order primates, within the order carnivores. I've also worked with elephants, and then most recently, gray wolves. Now, many of these species are engaged in some really intense human-wildlife conflict, right? Intense along the lines of, for example, Bengal tigers. It's been estimated that they've killed upwards of 360,000 humans in the last couple of 100 years alone on the subcontinent, right? So the kind of conflict that an elephant gets into in its pursuit of crop raiding can also result in human fatalities, likewise with chimpanzees. So very, very complicated species in a very complicated world where humans and wildlife are bumping into each other. But I must say that despite these extraordinary circumstances around the world with these difficult yet charismatic species, in all of my career, up until very recently when I started to work with Canis lupus, gray wolves, in all of my career, I have never encountered the array of attitudes and complex values, and in many cases vitriol, as I have of humans towards this species right here. It has been, it stunned me. I thought I'd been doing this for a while. I had worked with a number of difficult species, and yet I was not sort of prepared emotionally for what I might encounter and what I have encountered in terms of the dissonance and the difficult attitudes that folks have towards wolves. We all know just how polarizing they are. Folks either love them or they hate them. Always they have an opinion, right? So I can say this with a certain amount of kind of backdrop here. I am currently working with gray wolves in my research. I've been engaged in some conservation work. I teach a lot of wolf and wildlife related courses at CU Boulder, and these have sort of revealed this sort of dense and diverse and deep-seated dissonant array of towards wolves. Now, I'm an evolutionary ecologist. I am interested in the origins of things. How did this come to be, right? Why did I not encounter this array of attitudes towards tigers, right, as I have with gray wolves? And importantly, lest you think that this is just some sort of intellectual exercise, right, curiosity, I would argue that, in fact, this sort of spectrum of dissonant attitudes towards this endangered species actually impacts our ability to implement conservation action. So today what I want to do is explore the origins of this and get a sense of where it might have come from. And I'm going to start deep in time. What I want to do is first go through humans and wolves and how we've interacted both in very deep evolutionary time and then more recent history. I want to go through very quickly an array of what we call in ecology ecological interactions or species interactions between humans and wolves. And then I want to illustrate why this might be of significance to us today here in Colorado, right? Consequences for humans living with wolves now. So just, and this is where, just hold on, I'll try to get through this very quickly. Again, literally hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary history as depicted in this illustration here. Canis lupus, gray wolves. If I had a pointer, what I'd be pointing at are those two kind of pins that are indicating a region that is between Eurasia and the North American continent. For many millions of years, that was a very large land bridge that connected the two continents. And it's in this area that we find the oldest gray wolf fossils, dating somewhere between 800,000 to about 1 million years ago. And then what I'm trying to show here with those arrows is how gray wolves from that region that we call Beringia, how they dispersed throughout Eurasia and then ultimately over into North America, landing in areas of, say, Western Europe at about 400,000 years ago, and then trickling and dispersing down throughout North America between about 100 and 400,000 years ago. So modern humans, our own species, Homo sapien, we're a baby species. We've only been around for about 300,000 years. We evolved in sub-Saharan Africa, and then we moved our way out of the African continent between about 30 and 70,000 years, depending where you were on the continent. Now, of course, other earlier, more primitive hominin species had moved out of Africa, but our humans, until arriving to Western Europe, in particular, about 30 to 35,000. And then ultimately, of course, humans made their way, again, using that Bering land bridge, right, connecting the continents down into North America between about 18 and 21,000 years ago. So if you've been paying attention to the dates, this is very significant, right? Because the implication of this record that we have from paleontology is that humans and wolves have shared landscapes throughout all of history in the Northern Hemisphere up until 100 years ago and up until the mid-40s here in Colorado, right? So what we have shared as a species now, Homo sapien in the Northern Hemisphere in particular, is anywhere from about 30 to 70,000 years of shared space, right? Shared ecological space. Now, there's some important elements I want to bring up to this story that I'm hoping to tell. So, important context. Both humans and gray wolves are evolved big game hunters. This was our shtick in the Pleistocene epoch until about 10,000 years ago. We were very good at it. We had a sophisticated toolkit. We had throwing spears. We could take down prey. And as, of course, as we all know, as we've heard already, as are gray wolves, right, without the throwing spears. But the other part of it is that both Homo sapien and Canis lupus were a part of what was a very, I would call it fierce, abundant, and sort of species-rich assemblage of right, that makes Yellowstone today actually look very, it looks like it has very few. Up until about 10,000 years ago, there were vastly more species, and they were big, on average about 47% larger than the predators that we have today. The other part of this that's important is that gray wolves and humans, and we know this from an array of paleontological records. We also have these beautiful cave paintings, Upper Paleolithic cave paintings, paleontology, all kinds of stuff. What we know is that humans, modern humans in the northern hemisphere, and gray wolves shared overlapping prey, bringing down species like mammoth, bringing down multiple equid species, horses. Both species, aurochs, which was of course, the progenitor of our modern cattle, were really, really favorite species. So lots of overlapping prey. And then Canis lupus becomes Canis lupus familiaris, right? In that same epoch, Pleistocene epoch, over the past 30-ish thousand years, what we start seeing are indicators of dog domestication. And as I'm going to be discussing and try to tie into all of this, I think this is kind of the twist. So I could talk a lot about this, I won't, but suffice it to say that in this very long and deep evolutionary history of wolves and humans sharing landscapes, some of those wolves, not all clearly, but some of those wolves overcame their fear of humans, right, and started to take advantage of new food resources in the form of scavenged meat from human, right, and thus began this process that scientists call self-domestication. Now, humans benefited as well, right? We all know the benefit of having dogs around. They're good, they're really good sentries, they bark, they're vigilant, right? And humans learned the utility of having wolves around for predator protection against all those fierce cave lions, right? Eurasian hyena, etc. And also, as I will sort of touch upon, cooperative hunting. I'm going to leapfrog forward many, many thousands of years when the entire world changed. The shift from the Pleistocene into the Holocene, when humans figured out how to domesticate crops and all those other species that we now know of as livestock primarily, right? So incredibly different kinds of relationships with animals started to take place at about this same time, and it would have been at this time, right, that this concept, this cognitive concept of wild animals versus not wild animals would have started to emerge. And indeed, it's at about this time, at about 10,000 years ago, that we begin to see things like fences and walls to keep stuff out. Keep stuff out that might kill stuff that is within. Right? So a very, very different world of how to gather resources. You grow them yourself. You grow them yourself and keep stuff out. There would have been also a shift in how to think about wild animals. There would have been wild animals that you kill because you want to eat them, and then others you kill for livestock protection. And so what we see then is a shift towards an ethic of predator control, which made its way over the ocean, right, from especially regions of Western Europe, pushing off at about 400 years ago as Western Europeans began to colonize this continent, and then that predator control ethic pushing west in, of course, the inexorable kind of manifest destiny, right? And so we see an intensive history of extirpation, not just of gray wolves, right? There's a reason why we don't have grizzly bear in Colorado, right? This was across the board, right? It was federally mandated, right? There were congressionally appropriated funds to kill predators, and it was thus vastly more intense and effective than it was in Europe, taking place over a few hundred years as opposed to 10,000 years. Right? So what I've tried to outline for you is that our evolutionary and written history reveals very diverse ecological relationships between gray wolves and between modern humans. Right? And I want to talk about this a little bit more and just give you some background into what this might mean. And this comes from some terms. Don't get bogged down too much in those terms. But as it turns out, there are only, as an ecologist, there are only so many ways two species can interact. Right? And I've got a subset of them here. There are about 7 of them. We can be in a competitive relationship with another species, a parasitic relationship with another species, predator-prey, a commensal, or a mutualism. And what I'm doing there is indicating whether it's beneficial to one species or not. In light, I've kind of indicated that with a plus or a minus or a 0, right, neutral. And I would posit that, in fact, if you look at this long and deep history of interactions between our species, humans and wolves have been engaged in all, and it's this one, the mutualism, that I think adds the twist to all of or to much of the dissonance that we have, cognitive dissonance, about competition. Back then, we ate the same prey. Today, we eat the same prey. Hunters bemoan the fact that wolves are taking down elk and mule deer, right? Parasitism, predation. There would have been defensive killing of humans on wolves and vice versa. Commensalism with increased predator detection, but it's this mutualism, the cooperative hunting and the domestication of a companion animal that I think is kind of the twist that is adding to the dissonance of, should I love them and have them around, or should I hate them and kill them because they're taking what's mine? Right? And this is my attempt, as I've said, to kind of get at origins. We've got diverse ecological relationships, some negative, some positive, which no matter what, even though we're really, really good at sorting through things, no matter what, this can result in a lot of dissonance and a lot of diverse attitudes in deep time, recent history, and now. And this is where I want to talk, or sort of land in these last few slides, right, is that there are consequences of this sort of divergent array of attitudes towards wolves and other predators for that matter, but especially wolves. We've extirpated them. And ecologically, socio-ecologically, again, you've heard already some of this. You'll be hearing more. Altered food webs when you remove predators like wolves, overabundance of prey species, lost traditions for indigenous populations, and many generations of individuals who have lived in landscapes without predators, which means a lot of lost knowledge about it, and as a consequence, a lot of fear. But most importantly, and this is where I really want to kind of bring this, what we've done here in Colorado and what was done in Yellowstone, into the big picture. We are living in the 6th extinction. We are in a biodiversity extinction crisis. All of the available data that are there demonstrate that if we don't do something within the next few decades, we're going to lose upwards of 1 million species or more. The good news is that we have done stuff, and we are doing stuff. And we've got this amazing piece of legislation that we've got to hold on to, arguably one of the most important, most robust pieces of legislation for wildlife protection anywhere on Earth. We are now rewilding, is a term that people are using for putting things back whence they came. And gray wolves have featured prominently in all discussions about the Endangered Species Act and in terms of rewilding, and really, really impactful conservation initiatives, right? We've already heard about Yellowstone. We're going to be hearing more about the Colorado wolf reintroduction. But this has taken place amidst considerable controversy, right? Considerable. Not just in Yellowstone, but here in Colorado as well. And yet, 2 more slides, we have dogs, the other Canis lupus, right? And boy, do we have dogs. I have a lot. Our domesticated wolves that live in our houses, the combined weight is equal to the total weight of all other wild mammals on Earth. In the US alone, it's upwards of $160, $200 billion industry. And yet, we use our domesticated wolves, our dogs, to protect our livestock, right, and help with our livestock. We use dogs to hunt gray wolves, right? We use dogs to hunt, and we use pets as an argument for why, dogs included, for why we shouldn't have wolves around. That's a twist. That is what I think is sort of adding to the complexity of the conversation about wolves on landscapes and why you either love them or hate them. It's a part of it. The good news is that we know from Yellowstone, Doug knows this firsthand, is that with time and with a lot of compassion and a lot of work, more knowledge on the part of folks who are learning, relearning how to live with predators, habituation on the part of humans to the reality of having predators around, can diffuse these dissonant attitudes. And dogs are part of the solution. And here's just a juxtaposition of Yellowstone then, right? This is a photograph by Norm Bishop, who worked in the park at the time. Today, right, where that $82 million industry, right, of wolves is what you're looking at in part right there, right, wolf watching, and of course dogs is Great Pyrenees protecting some livestock there. So folks, that's it for me. That's my little attempt at AI. That's my Pomeranian with the gray wolf. Folks, I want to call out some really important and esteemed friends and colleagues of mine, but most notably Mike Phillips, right, who was at the helm in Yellowstone National Park and who was at the helm of getting wolves back into Colorado. Arguably, they would not be here if it weren't for this gentleman. I also want to recognize my colleagues at the Rocky Mountain Wolf Project. Matt Barnes is sitting right there.